Let me ask you a question. Have you ever looked at the people you love most in this world, the ones who share your blood, and wondered, are they capable of destroying my life? I used to brush that thought aside. I told myself it was just paranoia, the result of nights spent working to the point of exhaustion. Family is the safest place, right? It's the place you return to, the place you go to heal. I believed that for 10 years. For 10 years, I was Maya Reyes, cybersecurity engineer, but at home, I had a different role. I was the bank, the ATM, the savior, the fixer. I gave up vacations, shelved my dream of owning a home, and poured every drop of sweat, every single dollar, into keeping the family ship from sinking. I did it willingly. I did it for love. And then, on a gray Tuesday morning, they thanked me. Not with a hug, not with a word of gratitude. They thanked me with a thick stack of legal papers placed neatly on the dining table. A petition drafted by a lawyer I'd never heard of and signed by all of them, my mother, my sister, and even my little brother, whose nearly $100,000 debt I had just paid off last month. The contents? A request to the court to declare me, Maya Reyes, 30 years old, at the peak of my career, legally incompetent. They cited that I was overworked to the point of delusion, that I was obsessed with financial control, and needed to be protected from myself. In other words, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a plan. A carefully calculated heist, not with guns and bullets, but with legal clauses and a performance of love. They wanted to turn me into a puppet, and they would be the ones pulling the strings. They wanted to legalize their leeching. They thought I would break. They thought I would cry, beg. They thought that after all those years of sacrifice, I was completely exhausted and empty. They were right, partly. I was empty, but that emptiness wasn't a weakness. It was a void, the quiet before a storm. Because there was one thing they didn't know. For the past 2 years, while I was building a career for them, I was also building something else for myself. An impenetrable fortress, a military-grade encrypted vault buried deep in the digital world. A place where I stored every piece of evidence, every transaction, every recording, every lie. I call it the Obsidian Vault. And in today's video, I'm not just going to tell you my story, I'm going to open the door to that fortress. You'll have a front row seat to witness a perfect plan collide with an even more perfect truth. You'll see how smug smiles turn into horror when the truth is projected onto the big screen. So before we begin this trial where I am the judge, pour yourself a cup of coffee, get comfortable, hit the like button if you believe in justice, and hit subscribe if you want to see exactly how the Obsidian Vault changed everything. The fight for my dignity starts now. To understand the cruelty of that morning, you have to go back with me 5 years ago. Back then, we were still a normal family in Austin, Texas. My father had passed away early, leaving my mother, Brenda, to raise the 3 of us on her own. Life wasn't wealthy, but it was always full of laughter. I, Maya, had just graduated from college with honors in software engineering, fresh-faced and ready to take on the world. My sister, Chloe, was always the center of attention with her stunning looks and stylish fashion sense. My younger brother, Leo, was always full of big ideas, though he never saw one through to the end. And then, the nightmare struck. My mother received a diagnosis, a long, terrifying medical name that the doctor had to explain 3 times before we could comprehend it. Our entire world collapsed. The following days were a blur of cold hospital corridors, medical bills that began to pile up, and a frightening silence that fell over our once lively home. Insurance only covered a fraction, and the out-of-pocket costs quickly drained my mother's meager savings. The risk of losing our home, the place that held all our memories, became more real every day. I remember one evening like it was yesterday, sitting by my mother's hospital bed, holding her frail hand. She looked at me, her eyes tired but still forcing a smile. "I'm sorry, Maya," she whispered. "I've become a burden to you all." My heart clenched. In that very moment, I made a vow. "You are not a burden," I said, my voice firm. "You are everything to us. You just focus on fighting, you let me handle the rest." And I kept my word. The rest was a war of my own. I threw myself into work like a machine. On top of my main job at a tech firm, I took on freelance projects, writing code until 2 or 3 in the morning, endless nights at the keyboard, with only the glow of the monitor and cups of black coffee as my companions. I forgot what a vacation felt like. I wore the same old clothes while my friends showed off new outfits. The apartment I rented was just big enough for a bed and a desk. Every ounce of my energy, every thought, every dollar I earned had a single purpose: to pay my mother's bills, to keep our house, and to ensure Chloe and Leo could continue their lives without disruption. After 2 years, a miracle happened. My mother beat the disease. She made a full recovery. The day she was discharged, we cried tears of joy. I thought the storm had finally passed. I thought I had fulfilled my promise. I thought now I could finally start living for myself. But I was wrong. Tragically wrong. The storm had passed, but it had left behind a subtle change in my family. They had grown accustomed to an endless supply. My mother, though healthy, didn't return to work, saying the emotional trauma was too great and she needed time to recover. My sister, Chloe, began pursuing a career as an influencer. Her requests for support grew larger. "Maya, I need $2,000 for this handbag. It's crucial for my brand." Or, "I need $5,000 for a trip to Bali to get quality content." My brother Leo bounced from one failed business venture to the next. "I just need a $20,000 push, Maya. The crypto market is booming. I'll pay you back 100 times over." And I, bound by that old vow and a sense of guilt, couldn't say no. Every time I hesitated, my mother would sigh, "Without you, I don't know what this family would do. You're our only hope." And just like that, I became a machine. A money-printing machine that never ran out of ink, fueled by love and a sense of duty. I told myself they needed me, that this was temporary. Just one more time, I lied to myself hundreds of times. I didn't realize that, somewhere along the way, my role as the savior had morphed into the role of the prey. But money wasn't the only thing they took from me. Soon, I would realize I wasn't just being financially exploited. I was being systematically sabotaged. And their next attack would target something much, much deeper: my soul. The financial erosion was gradual, like a chronic illness. But the attack on my soul came fast and brutal, like a car crash. It all started when I met David. He was an architect, a kind, gentle man with a warm smile. We met through a mutual friend, and for the first time in years, I felt seen as a woman, not a provider. David didn't care how much money I made. He cared about the books I read, the movies I loved, and my thoughts on the world. He listened. Something so simple. But for me, it felt like an extravagant gift. With David, I started to find myself again. For the first time in 5 years, I bought a new dress not for a family event, but because I wanted to look beautiful for him. I allowed myself to be happy, a feeling that was both foreign and sweet. I thought, maybe this was the light at the end of the tunnel. But I had forgotten one thing. My family didn't want me to find the light. They needed me to stay in the dark, where they were my only light, the center of my universe. When I introduced David to them, their reaction wasn't joy. It was a carefully veiled inspection. My mother, Brenda, pulled me into the kitchen, her voice full of concern. "You have to be careful, Maya. Men are complicated these days, especially when they know you're financially capable. You need to make sure he loves you, for you." Her words were like a poisoned needle, planting a seed of doubt in my mind. My brother Leo clapped me on the shoulder condescendingly. "He seems okay, but is he ambitious enough? You deserve better." But the cruelest was Chloe. She looked David over like he was a piece of merchandise, then turned to me with a smirk. "He's cute, a little safe for my taste, but if you're happy, I guess." My happiness, in her eyes, was just a mediocre choice. And then she made her move. A few weeks later, when my relationship with David was going beautifully, he suddenly grew distant. The texts became sparse. The calls felt awkward. He canceled our weekend date with a vague excuse. I pressed him, worried I had done something wrong. Finally, during a tense conversation, he said the words that left me numb. "I think you need some time for yourself, Maya. I heard you're still not really stable after what happened with your mom. Your sister Chloe is really worried about you. She said you're obsessed with work and money, that you have a tendency to control everything, and you're pretty emotionally unstable." My head was spinning. Chloe. She had reached out to David privately. She had painted a portrait of me. My heart shattered into a million pieces. David left, leaving me alone with my confusion and unbearable pain. At first, I blamed myself. But then, one fateful evening, when I went to my mother's house to drop off the monthly support, I happened to see Chloe's phone light up on the table. A message from her best friend popped up. What happened with the David situation? And I saw Chloe's reply. A reply that froze the blood in my veins. Got rid of that guy. Now Maya is ours again. She's got a big bonus coming up. In that moment, everything shattered. The pain wasn't hot, it was ice cold. This wasn't the betrayal of a jealous sister. This was a calculated move by a handler, pruning away any outside connections to the asset to ensure exclusive access. They didn't just want my money, they wanted my life. They wanted me alone, dependent, and forever theirs. That night, I didn't cry. I sat in front of my computer. My fingers flew across the keyboard, but this time, it wasn't to write code for a client's project. I was building a fortress. I channeled all of my cybersecurity expertise, creating an encrypted, impenetrable space. That was the night the Obsidian Vault was born. I made a decision. If they wanted to turn my life into an indictment of instability, I would turn their existence into an irrefutable archive of evidence. It was time to stop being the victim and start being the archivist. The game had changed, and they, basking in their petty victory, had no idea they were about to face a full audit of their very souls. The pain didn't disappear, it was converted. It became energy, fuel for a single purpose. That night, after reading Chloe's text, the old me, the loving, naive, self-sacrificing Maya, died. A new Maya was born from those ashes. An archivist, an analyst, a collector of truth. The Obsidian Vault wasn't just a folder, it was an ecosystem. With my cybersecurity expertise, I turned my life into a forensic project. Every request for money from my family was no longer an emotional burden but a data point. I wrote a small script to automatically scan my emails and texts, tagging and categorizing every finance-related conversation. Phrases like emergency, just this once, I'll pay you back, times are tough were all highlighted and stored. I started recording every phone call. Texas state law permits recording with one-party consent, and I was that one party. My mother's tearful voice on the phone about a sudden credit card debt. My sister's excited pitch for an investment opportunity in a resort vacation. My brother's oaths about the potential of some unknown crypto coin. It all became audio files meticulously named by date and subject. But the most damning part of the Obsidian Vault lay deeper. I used my skills to conduct a full digital audit. I didn't just look at what they said, I looked for what they were hiding. I traced the transactions from the accounts I had paid into. My mother's loan for home repairs had actually been funneled directly into a high-risk stock trading account. The cost of Chloe's photography course was actually a receipt for lavish parties at Austin's most expensive nightclubs. And the most horrific discovery, my brother Leo. He hadn't just borrowed money. He had used a copy of my ID to open an account on a little-known crypto exchange, making massive leverage trades and losing everything. Legally, that was identity theft. For nearly 2 years, I lived a double life. On the surface, I was still Maya, still the provider, though more reluctant and with more questions. I became an anthropologist, observing my tribe with a cold, clinical detachment. I saw their irritation grow as I became less compliant. I saw the desperation in their eyes as the supply began to show signs of interruption. And that desperation led them to their final act, the attack they thought would be the kill shot. I discovered their plot through technology, of course. The small security camera I had installed in my mother's living room, originally to monitor her health, recorded everything: the family meeting, the presence of a strange lawyer, and the chilling words, "She's not as easy to manage anymore," I heard my mother's voice say on the recording. "She's starting to ask questions. Her silence is scarier than her anger. We need to act before she completely wakes up," Chloe added. "This psychological evaluation, along with our testimony about her instability, will be enough for the court to grant Mom conservatorship over her assets." They didn't just want my money anymore. They wanted to strip me of my autonomy. They wanted to turn me into a child in an adult's body, completely controlled by law. That's when I knew the collection phase was over. It was time to publish the data. I got the call inviting me to an emergency family meeting at a fancy law office downtown. I knew it was their trap. I walked into the conference room. All 3 of them were there, sitting across from me. Their faces were a strange mix of feigned concern and poorly hidden smugness. Their lawyer, a slick man with a polished smile, began to speak. He talked about the family's deep concern for my mental well-being and erratic financial decisions. He spoke of the importance of an intervention out of love. They presented the prepared documents, the court petition, and a voluntary conservatorship agreement. My mother smiled, a smile of fake pity, and placed a pen in front of me. "We're doing this because we love you, Maya." And that's when I knew the show was over. I looked her straight in the eye, returned a smile of my own, and said a single sentence. "Before I sign anything," I said, my voice clear and sharp, "I think we should all watch a short presentation." "A presentation," the family's lawyer repeated, his smile twitching slightly. Ms. Reyes, I don't think we have time for... He never finished his sentence. The conference room door swung open. A woman in a power suit strode in, followed by a young assistant. It was Mrs. Watkins, my lawyer. She gave me a professional nod, then turned to the opposing counsel. "Oh, I believe we have plenty of time," she said, her voice sharp as glass. "In fact, I think you and your clients will find this presentation very compelling." The smugness on my family's faces began to crack. I said nothing more, calmly opening my laptop and connecting it to the large monitor on the wall. The click of the HDMI cable echoed in the silence, sounding like the cocking of a gun. The screen lit up. A simple but heavy title slide appeared. The Obsidian Vault, a financial and legal review of the Reyes family, period 2020 to 2025. Presented by Maya Reyes. I saw my mother flinch. Chloe frowned and Leo began to fidget in his seat. I hit the button. "We'll begin with Exhibit A," I said. "Unauthorized transactions and identity theft." On the screen appeared a scan of my passport next to an account application for a crypto exchange I had never heard of. It was followed by a series of statements showing massive loans and disastrous leveraged trades. The total loss under my name? $97,400. "Leo," I said, looking my brother in the eye for the first time, "do you recognize this digital signature? You used my information to gamble and lose. Are you aware that's a felony?" Leo turned white as a sheet. He stammered, looking to my mother for help, but she was just as stunned. Next, Exhibit B, Irregular Expenditures and Fraudulent Claims. The screen split into two. On the left were Chloe's text messages. "Maya, I really need the $5,000. This design course is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." Date sent, October 15th. On the right were photos from Chloe's own Instagram account, posted on October 18th. She was posing on a yacht in Ha Long Bay, Vietnam, with the caption, "Living the life you dream of." "That trip must have taught you a lot about design, Chloe," I asked sarcastically. Before she could react, I hit the next button. An audio file opened. Chloe's voice filled the room, clear and venomous. The recording of her conversation with her friend. "Got rid of that guy, David. Now Maya is ours again." You recorded me?" Chloe shrieked, her face flushing with rage and humiliation. I ignored her. And finally, Exhibit C, Psychological Manipulation and Conspiracy to Commit Fraud. This was the finishing blow. The video from the security camera in my mother's living room played. The entire room fell deathly silent, forced to listen to their own words. The voices of my mother, Chloe, Leo, and even their lawyer sitting right here, all conspiring to have me declared incompetent. The line, "She's the golden goose, but she keeps thinking she's a person," echoed off the expensive wood-paneled walls. When the video ended, no one spoke. The silence was absolute. The family's lawyer looked like he had aged 10 years. My mother buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. Now my lawyer, Mrs. Watkins, spoke. "As you can see," she said, her tone professional but ice cold, "we have sufficient evidence for a criminal case of organized fraud and identity theft against Mr. Leo Reyes, and civil suits for financial and emotional damages against Mrs. Brenda and Ms. Chloe Reyes." She placed 2 thick binders on the table. "However, My client, Ms. Reyes, is prepared to offer you an alternative. Option A, we see you in court. Option B, you sign this agreement. She pushed a binder toward them. This agreement includes a legally binding repayment schedule for the full documented amount, a mandatory requirement to attend therapy programs for gambling addiction and financial management, and a 1-year restraining order of no contact to give my client the space she needs to heal. You have 24 hours to decide. I stood up and packed my laptop. I didn't look at them anymore. To me, they had ceased to exist in that room. As I walked out the door, I heard my mother sob my name, but I didn't turn back. 6 months have passed. They chose option B. The house in Austin was sold to cover the debts. Leo is on probation and doing community service. Chloe had to delete her Instagram account and get a real job. My mother is in therapy. I don't know, and I don't need to know if they're truly changing. That's their battle. As for me, I started my war, and I won. I moved to Denver to start a new life. The Obsidian Vault is no longer a weapons cache. It has become the foundation for my own cybersecurity consulting firm, specializing in helping victims of digital financial fraud. I learned a priceless lesson. Boundaries aren't walls to keep love out. They are gates to protect your own worth. You cannot save someone who is actively trying to drown you with them. Sometimes the most powerful act of self-love is the courage to walk away. The red folder of my past has been closed, but my book, the one written by me for me, has only just begun.